Was to be an art student. So I started out trying to be an art student, and I only spent 2 years as an art student, and I left simply because the art teachers that were teaching me were doing exhibitions, and at the end of their exhibitions they weren't selling a goddamn thing. So I said, this is my life. So I left, and I was in the house for a good part of a year with my father having no inkling that I was not going to school, and I was there chipping away learning the music at the same time. But the little art experience that I had, I was in my late teens, and by the time I got into the music, I abandoned all that, and it was a good 45 years went by before I picked the paintbrush up and the pencil up again and did something. And that was based on another technicality. When I damaged my shoulder, I was unable to do any tours because I couldn't hold a guitar at the time or nothing. And as a result, my family member threw a book in my hand. My son's mother threw a sketchbook in my hand and said, "You're not going to be sitting around the house here moping because you can't tour. Do something with yourself." And I started to do some sketching and saw that it was all coming back. I would say the very first awareness that there was something wrong with the planet is when John F. Kennedy got assassinated. That was the first message of me saying there's something wrong with the picture. And then the second message was when Malcolm X actually got assassinated. We saw him lying down there, and I just remember my father saying, "Me know, man, me know they was gonna kill him. I know he was, he kept saying, I knew it, I knew they'll get him, I knew they'll get him." Then there was Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, and the first thing that came to mind said, wow, it's just America, a place that kills people. But as far as me becoming politically active and realizing what's really going on is when the Mexico Olympics took place and we saw these three guys on a podium and these two black African Americans raising their fists in the air, and it's like we're going, what the? Did you see that? And it was, and I mean the rest is history,
So your crew would be part of the
Windrush generation. And during that transition of me realizing what's going on, where we started to see hope, was when Muhammad Ali came on board and saying, yo, we're not going to be pasting our chins on our chest anymore while we're walking. We're going to be doing this. We're proud. And Muhammad Ali was a major contribution to us looking up in the United Kingdom.
All right, so I interviewed Maxi Priest, right? And the man was telling me how racist London was.
It was serious. It was at a high level. I mean, neighbors, on one side of in our family was West Indian people lived next door, and on the other side, some crazy dude just forever told us, go back home to your country, go back to where you come from, you black this, black that, you this, you that, whatever. And every time we played as kids, anytime our ball or anything went over to his garden, he would cut it up, stab it, whatever, and just be ridiculous. I guess, and I'm probably saying this now, but, at the time it was pretty hurtful. It was very hurtful. Signs, no black people here, no Irish, no black.
This was in the 70s.
Yeah. And 60s.
It was the first generation of blacks born in the UK from the Windrush generation. But I had brothers and sisters that came over one by one in the 60s that experienced racism in their workforce. You see what I'm saying? Now, during that time, there was also the ska music. And the ska music was, funny enough, admired, loved by the skinheads, who were initially a racist institution wearing Levi jeans or Wrangler jeans, which was a fashion at the time, checkered shirts, have their hair cropped short with Dr. Martin boots, which they called bother boots. And it was all about going around, beating up minorities, especially blacks and Asians. But when the when the ska music came in and they loved it so much, they eased off the black community because of the love of the music. And they called the term from then on Paki bashing. All we're going to do is Paki bashing, which meant go around beating up Pakistani people. So that was a climate that was happening at the time. And we started to cling on to what we saw was going on in America with the Black Panther movement and, you know, the Angela Davis with George Jackson and all these kind of things springing up. And we decided to become politically conscious. And then the reggae music was also informative in the dance halls with Burning Spear in particular, talking about Marcus Garvey and getting us connected to Africa.
What were you guys reading during the time? Like, what was the whole vibe at the time? Where was this information coming from?
This information was how we started to register things after we started to realize that slavery was just not a thing that happened in history and had nothing to do with us, because that's how it was portrayed, you know, in English textbooks. You know, oh, it took a long time, happened a long time ago and it had nothing to do with you. And then as we start connecting the dots, we're saying, hang on, that guy that did that was our great, great, great grandfather. You see what I'm saying? So we started to read, and as I mentioned tonight, then there were a lot of books that was happening that we could not ascertain in the United Kingdom, but were available in the United States and vice versa.
What were some of those books?
Books like Groundings with My Brothers by Walter Rodney.
I was on the great Walter Rodney.
Yes,
those
man.
times?
Walter Rodney did no wrong for me back then, right? And Malcolm X's autobiography, of course. The letters of George Jackson, Blood in My Eye by George Jackson, which these were just, and then on the spiritual side of things, we were reading books like the 5th, 6th, and 7th book of Moses, and the books of Moses going up to 8, 9, and 10, and the Apocrypha, which were missing books of the Bible, which a lot of Rastafarians related to because it had the 1st and 2nd Maccabees, and there are the books called the 3 Holy Children, Esdras, which was a spin-off from Ezra, that's in the Bible itself, Jeremy, that was a spin-off from Jeremiah in the Bible itself. So we was, basically, what we were doing was seeking a half that was never been told.
And what was the live like? Because I see pictures when y'all was younger, y'all was young and fit, so y'all was eating kind of vegetarian at that time still, y'all was just working out?
We were working on it. We weaned ourselves off it bit by bit. And you know, by the time we decided to have a full head of locks, you know, especially when we did the Bob Marley tour, you know, the whole Rastafarian vibes at the time, you know, we just said to ourselves, this is it. We're through with Babylon right now. The church was no longer an institution that I respected, and we just, you know, as the Twinkle Brothers would say, we threw the comb away.
Good brave lads, coming out here to kill themselves a real live Injun, putting up their forts in a country they've got no claim to. So what the hell do you expect the Indians to do? Sit back on their butts while the army takes over their land?
You saw for yourself what they did, taking off scalps.
Yeah, and who taught them that little trick? The white man.
Oh, and cutting off hands, and cutting off feet, and cutting off...
I know what they cut off, but at least they don't make tobacco pouches out of them. That's something else you soldier boys made up.
When we watch movies, we reinterpreted the movies. For example, Soldiers is based off a movie called Soldier Blue, starring Candice Bergman, which was based on a film. The movie was based on the American cavalry bluecoats annihilating, massacring thousands of Indians.
You got our spears, you got our shields, but the guns were greater. We brought for the slaughter. Give up our kind witch doctor. Give up our kind Dracula. We know I'm a dictator. We know I'm a
And I sort of imagined that scenario in relationship to us as Africans that was slaughtered, you know, like the Ethiopian invasion at the time, and the invasion of the Zulus that was going on back in the late 1800s by the British. And yeah, we just sort of flipped the script and interpret it to how we are seeing ourselves being treated.
All right, with that message, that powerful message that was coming in the music, was it being embraced by African people in England, or was it being embraced by the Europeans? Who was catching on to the music first with that message?
Funny enough, in all honesty, because we were a British black reggae band at the time, there was a stigma, a negative stigma in the community where, because you're from Britain, the reggae music that you're producing was not good enough compared to that what was in Jamaica. So when we actually got nationally known, it was not based on what we were doing in a black community, although we attended small clubs in various cities that were where black communities were. But it was actually, you know, the white populace using the punk rock music as a vehicle that established us, where we were invited as supporting acts for major punk rock acts that were happening at that time. And that's how our message got on board.
What is that about, like, because we even see it now to a certain extent, what is that about, like, the Europeans accepting the roots and culture music more than our people?
To begin with, I think the music itself is hypnotic. So it's not so much the lyrics initially, because it's the vibe. And there was a time where what came with the music was racial harmony, if you see what I'm saying. You know, when Bob Marley sung his songs and we sung our songs, they and Third World sung their songs, they were realizing that it was reggae music was starting to represent unity and racial harmony. So I think that's what brought them on board in the first place. While the black community, however, you know, although it was about spirituality and political consciousness, they were still picking and choosing who it was coming from. And I'm saying that purposely because I remember when Marley became such an icon because of the white community across the planet, he was no longer embraced by the black community in comparison to, say, Gregory Isaacs and also Black Uhuru and D. Brown, if you see what I'm saying. So it was like, it's a bit of a conundrum, one for a better phrase, when it comes to how the music was not
like
from.
I share y'all.
Yes.
Yeah, like you have to be with us.
Right.
That's easy. Bob Marley, touring with Bob Marley. What year did you drop tour with Bob Marley? And real quick, what was your greatest lesson from touring with the Realists?
The Marley tour was July of 1978. Touring with Marley was, I honestly think that if we'd never done that Marley tour for those few dates that we did in Europe, I don't think Steel Pulse would be the band you know it to be today. Because there was a lot of, we saw someone that grafted, you see what I'm saying, that performed and took every show as if it was his last show. We saw the professionalism in how he handled the audience. We saw how tight his band was and how every night was important to him. And I think seeing that, which is a leap I think a lot of reggae artists needs to still take out, where just don't take the audience for granted. You know, and I honestly believe that if we never had that experience, I don't think we would have been the band we are today.
Thank you so much for watching I Never Knew TV.
Please subscribe, comment, like.